and welcome to the continuation of our Living World Lecture Series. I'm so happy to see so many people out tonight. So tonight I have a special guest introducing our speaker, and this is the founder of the Living World Lecture Series from the Department of Ecology and Evolution, distinguished Professor Emeritus Jeff Livingston.
I'm glad you all could come tonight. I think it's going to be very interesting. So we have a long history on Long Island of redneck cases. And some of them are nationally famous, like Robert Cushman Murphy, which I think probably many of you have heard of. He once had a louse named after him, and a bird. And he said, I'd rather have a louse named after me than a mountain. And that's a really powerful thing to say, because he wasn't a biologist and nobody knew about it. He has a mountain named after him, too. So, a very famous person. And then we have a whole succession of people. Somebody on this campus, when I first came to Stony Brook, actually shackled himself to a piece of woods, and a succession of presidents avoided turning over these woods to in perpetuity to nature. And it's still not turned over exactly. But our most recent president who left us for Yale said something a little more encouraging than some previous ones. So maybe we'll have that. We have an amazing array of people here. And also somebody, when I first came to campus, Nora Brevis, a name which probably most of you, if you don't know, you should know. She was somebody who was one of the core people who fought against the shore nuclear power plant and stopped it. And she and Michio Kaku, who was a very famous CCNY professor, but also a physicist and very great environmental activist, stopped this nuclear power plant. So sometimes people who love nature and really do important things. Other times people get things done. And John Turner is somebody who's gotten a lot done. And he actually sent his biography, and I'm not going to go through it.
It's very short.
It's a lot of stuff. And he said, don't say a thing about me. But I'll say two things. One is that if you go around the town of Brookhaven or Long Island, you'll see his footprints or his mark in many, many places. In my neighborhood, there's a lot that he helped facilitate turning into a little piece of nature, but there are lots of other pieces of land that he's done that. And he's founded or been a leader in just about every environmental organization that's important in this area. The Nature Conservancy, Long Island Pine Barren Society, which I think he's the co-founder of, and I can probably mention one of others. But the one that is most fun is his membership and officership in the Four Harbors Audubon Society. Because in August and September, this is the one thing I'll put a little detail, is you can go to a little bridge in Setauket, and there he will be. And there will some of you in the audience will be as well. Victor, there are a bunch of you are here because again, being there, counting nighthawks. You know, and the nighthawks like to fly at night. And also in the morning, but nobody must go out in the morning because but in the evening, at dusk, they come out. So he has this amazing array of influence from people who just love him because he's a great birder to many things he's done for the environment. But tonight, he's going to talk about something which is a very important issue, which just came up, as you know, a few weeks ago, when many people had their properties washed away. I just talked to a woman I know in Stony Brook who had her whole hillside washed away, and she's now reconstructing it. And of course, the dam burst in Stony Brook Harbor. But there are dams all over America in rivers. That's the important thing. What's happened in Stony Brook is something that could be dealt with and thought about throughout all of North America, and in fact, all of Europe, and a lot of other places. So, without any further ado, let me welcome John L. Turner.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I very much appreciate the opportunity to provide a perspective on the issue of dams and whether or not we should rebuild them. Let me just turn this on. Before I launch right into the discussion, I want to just mention a few things before that. One is, I do want to invite already ahead of time, because it's going to be just about a year away, but to come down to the Nighthawk Watch, if you are in the area. The Four Harbors Audubon Society has sponsored for 8 years now, or actually run, in cooperation with Frank Melville Park, the Stonebridge Common Nighthawk Watch. If you don't know what a nighthawk is, I encourage you to go online and take a look. They're really, I think it's an iconic species and a charismatic species, and I know my colleagues here that show up every night feel the same. It's really a remarkable bird, closely related to whippoorwills and chuck-wills widows. And what we're trying to do is to count how many pass through on full migration, to try to provide just one little bit of additional data to scientists so they'll have some sense about population trends. Where that value really becomes heightened, of course, is many decades later. Like a Christmas bird count, when you have 125 years worth of data, you start really being able to discern trends. So that's the hope that for that Nighthawk Watch. But it's also just a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of there's no alcohol there, but there's you can bring some. It's just it's a lot of fun. It's a great opportunity to learn more about migratory bird conservation. So that's one thing I want to say. The other is to talk very quickly. Jeff talked about Long Island being kind of having a lot of famous naturalists and environmentalists, and that's certainly the case. And I don't know to what extent you may realize that, but Long Island has been a hotbed of environmental activism, disproportionate, I think, to the population here. If you take a look at some of the major national and even international issues and battles that have gone on with regard to DDT, that started here at Stony Brook University and close communities around here with the formation of the Environmental Defense Fund, some of the professors that helped lead the charge that ultimately led to DDT being banned, worked obviously here at professors at Stony Brook University. Suffolk County's been a leader with regard to issues. The whole farmland protection program that's now national, been implemented nationally to try this idea back in 1970. Well, let's buy the development rights of farms to keep them in agriculture, so we have a food supply in the metropolitan area to try to ensure that the bucolic rural character of Long Island is maintained to some extent. That started in Suffolk County. The bottle bill, that was a state bill, that started in Suffolk County, and on and on and on. I've actually given a couple lectures on it. Last time we did that was Steve Engelhart's last week. You may know Steve, the former assemblyman, now county legislator and professor here as well. So it's neat to be part of this group of colleagues that have been involved in kind of passionate focus on natural history and turning that passion into activism and trying to make a difference in protecting the natural world that we have here. In that vein, before I start, and I promise this is the last thing that we will jump in, I did want to make point about an opportunity that you have. And that is, we worked pretty hard along with a number of other conservation organizations on the island to secure passage this year in the New York State Assembly and the New York State Senate legislation that would ban the commercial harvest of horseshoe crabs. Each year, 150,000 horseshoe crabs are caught each year, slaughtered, mostly females, to be used as bait in the eel and mostly whelk fisheries. As well as in other parts of the states, they're actually also bled for their life-saving compound that they have in them. But that also results in 15 to 20% of them dying. So we've not treated horseshoe crabs very well. And Carl, can you raise your hands quickly? So if you're interested in learning more about it, Carl just had a wonderful piece in Newsday. You can go back and look. What, 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago?
Yeah, a week and a half ago or something, but John wrote most of it. They wouldn't let me keep his name as co-author because he had something so recently that they were sick of him.
They are sick of you. And you'll be sick of me pretty soon. Anyway, so we have been trying to get the word out. And so one small step that you can do is you take a postcard tonight, sign it, put a stamp on it, and it's gonna go to the governor urging that you sign the commercial harvest into, into law. Connecticut's done it, other states have done it. I'm not gonna go again, you do the whole program, horseshoe crabs. New York State's horseshoe crab population has been classified as poor by the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, so it's not been managed well. And we just think it's time, there's other alternatives, and it's just time to stop. Since 2000, 4 million horseshoe crabs have died in New York being harvested for the bait industry. 4 million animals have died. I mean, it's fine. So anyway, I'm just gonna.
Could you pass them around now?
What's that?
Could you pass them around now?
Yeah, I was gonna do it. Yeah. So I'll just, here's a few.
I can let them pass those out.
Can you do? Okay. And it's okay. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate it. Okay. So please bear with me. I got two different. This is really high tech. I'm a little nervous. So we'll try to. Okay. Great. Well, look at that. So and you can see that. Okay. So again, when Marin asked me to give a presentation, thinking first about kind of the ecological impacts of the dam failure at the Stony Brook Mill Pond. It got me going and thinking about, well, dams and how they really are obviously features that sever ecosystems and natural communities. And I thought more and more about it and said, okay, it's not just dams, but there's other features that do the same. So one thing led to another, and about 20 hours later, I finished putting together this PowerPoint on this topic called Severed Threads, Restitching Ecological Connections. I didn't like doing that fancy. I spent at least an hour animating every slide. It's a doing pleasure. So I'm going to state the obvious here, but land clearing and development, if you drive around and you see a 100-acre tract of forest that's being cleared for a shopping mall or industrial park, it's quite apparent, readily apparent, the impact that species of wildlife and natural communities. Not many species are going to survive that activity. Eventually, there will be some species that can actually do okay in that kind of habitat, but it's a absolute small shadow or echo of what was once there. So you understand pretty much land clearing and development's direct impacts. But a more subtle impact of wildlife involves these features that adversely affect wildlife by severing and compromising connections. And what are some of those? Well, dams, culverts, roads, and highways. And you see the slide of that highway. By the way, I just pulled most of this off the internet. But let's make believe that's the Long Island Expressway, that slide. It's not, but make believe it is. Imagine if you're a box turtle, or you're one of many other types of species that don't have wings, and you want to get from Islip up into Smithtown. The expressway is like the Great Wall of China. It is absolutely a landscape feature that has profound impacts on wildlife mobility. Something we don't often think about. Same thing with Sunrise Highway. And these north-south roads, same thing. And so you quickly realize that how these features really can fragment a landscape and make it more difficult for wildlife to persist or to survive. So what's the response to reducing fragmentation caused by roads and highways? We're going to cover, again, dams and culverts in the second half. It's the construction of overpasses and underpasses. And when I was researching this, I was really energized, very pleased to see the amount of effort that's going on throughout the world in response to roadkill, wildlife. So just as one example, in Banff National Park, anybody been there to Banff? Okay. Did you see these?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you get there and talk about it? So you can see they really took the roadkill issue, the wildlife that was getting routinely hit by vehicles. Of course, probably killing or injuring the animals, but of course could also jeopardize the humans that are in the car. They installed 6 overpasses and 38 underpasses on the main road in Banff National Park to address this issue. You may know about this, right now, there's another major wildlife overpass that's in the process of being constructed in Los Angeles, I think it's north of Los Angeles, that they got funding from that particular foundation that will allow for wildlife to move safely over 101, which is a very, this is again, a rendering, it's not the actual road, but when it's completed, it will allow for wildlife, particularly red mountain lions, which are been adversely affected by roads, a number of road kills, including one famous mountain lion that got a lot of attention, got killed just over the last year. Well, go the wrong way. So here's the good news. If you see, there are 1,500 wildlife crossings traversing U.S. roads, with several hundred more in the planning stage. People are responding to the issue. Now, it pales in comparison to what the need is. I want to put this in the right perspective. Still got to do a lot more. But nevertheless, there are people that are dealing with this and putting, again, overpasses and underpasses to try to provide the ability for animals to safely move from one area to another. Now taking it down to the scales, we're not talking about, again, mountain lions or moose moving across the landscape, but smaller animals. There's been a lot of interest and effort to try to provide safe passage for amphibians. And one of those is shown here. You see in the right photo, there's 2 spotted salamanders that have moved through that tunnel and have moved from where they spend their winter in upland habitats to move down to the likely vernal pools that they use to breed in the spring. And this particular one is I think it is the first salamander tunnel ever installed up in Amherst, Massachusetts, on Henry Street. Let's well, okay. That is Henry Street. You see how unobtrusive the tunnel is? You drive right, didn't know it was there, you just drive over it, never get a second thought. But after that tunnel, you can just imagine the slaughter that took place with regard to salamanders trying to make it across for breeding each spring. Well, we've taken that to heart, and we went into my town of Brookhaven we've installed a frog salamander tunnel out at East Bartlett Road in Middle Island. That road is just south of the Spring Lake Golf Course, if you know that area, and the story here is I was conducting vernal pool work and was driving south on East Bartlett, so kind of coming at you, and window was open. I was listening for amphibians calling one night, and the window opened, and I heard them. I heard wood frogs. But what I was more struck by is I could smell iron in the air. You bleed, you get that classic kind of iron smell. Well, and I could smell it just as I came down at that crest. There were hundreds of amphibians crushed in the road, and it was their blood that I was collecting, smelling. I said, that can't happen. So went to the town, and the town board was very supportive of the idea of spending a little bit of money to put together, it's actually a company called ACO, fabricates these tunnels and put it in. So this tunnel exists now on East Bartlett Road, and has been quite effective at passing animals. What you need to do with these tunnels is you need to have, we say, please note the curtain fence. We actually just want the permanent fencing that's gonna go up, and I actually have a meeting later this month with the installation crew to put it in. But any of these kind of tunnels, you need to guide the animals into the tunnel. Like, obviously, after that, they'll just cross through the road pretty much randomly. So that fencing is really important. And again, I'm just delighted the town board was supportive, and the highway superintendent, Superintendent Squadro, said, sure, I'll let my highway department put the tunnel in, kind of shut down the road for about an hour and did the work. So here on Long Island, we've done, can you see now, go to this. There's the tunnel right there. So here, the neat thing is, so I'm coming down this way. This vernal pool, there's another vernal pool here, there's more vernal pools back here. They've got wonderful spring peeper, gray tree frog, and wood frog, and green frog, and bullfrog populations, as well as spotted salamanders. And the good news is, we have bought this property as open space, 3.6 acres. I negotiated a deal with the property owner. Funny thing is, when we were putting the tunnel in, this fellow Robert Michelle comes out to the road. So what are you guys doing, man? So we started chatting, very conservation minded. He was thinking about living in Long Island, he's at an age where he wanted to go upstate. So I approached him, would you be interested in selling your property to the town? At first, he wanted to do a life estate, anyway, it worked out, sure, we'll do it. So the, you can see the house that's here, we bought the property, the house has just been demolished 2 weeks ago. And if you go out there, which is your property as a town of Brookhaven resident and taxpayer, you can enjoy it. We are looking to buy more properties along the west side of East Bartlett if we can, to really preserve a whole complex of rental pools in that area. So, kind of a neat project. Something that's in the planning stages, but optimistic it's gonna happen, up at Cedar Beach, Mount Sinai Harbor. We have had an issue with diamondback terrapins being roadkill. And the sad thing there is that it's really the females that are getting killed, because females coming up out of the water to conduct their egg laying, and they cross that busy road and they get killed. In fact, this spring wasn't bad, but last spring, over by Old Man's Boat Yard further west, we had 2 really large females hit by cars and killed. And it doesn't take long for that to happen, to just see the population diminish to the point where it can kind of weak out through time. We don't want to see that happen. So what we have done now is we've actually put black tubing along the southern edge of this area, but we actually now have gotten a grant to put the tunnels I just showed you, 2 tunnels, and maybe a 3rd tunnel further west, that will allow for the animals to navigate across. They like to lay their eggs in the females in a big sandy area here. And by putting in a fencing, we'll be able to have them safely, and the tunnels safely be able to make their way across and come back to where they then head back into the water. Terrapins are one of the neatest species we have on Long Island, and we're really fortunate enough to have a pretty good population of diamondback terrapins in this area. I mean, Stony Harbor's got a really nice population, several hundred terrapins, Setauket Harbor, Conscience Bay, as well, and again, Mount Sinai Harbor. So you can see these terrapins if you go out during the warm months, just their little heads bobbing, if you really focus on it a bit. There you go. Female terrapin crossing the road. And then I just on the internet found this fascinating. Some of you may have heard about this Christmas Island in Australia. This amazing red crab migration that occurs each spring, and they cared enough to put a crab overpass that the crabs, you could see, use, thereby keeping them off the road and preventing just thousands of them becoming roadkill. That to me just underscores how we really can be good and compassionate at times as a species doing this kind of project. Very quickly, there's 2 slides that show basically the same thing. And the good news about dealing with roadkill and wildlife crossings and trying to reduce that, in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act that passed just a couple of years ago, I forget how many billions of dollars it was, oodles of money, but $350 million was set aside for this new program, Wildlife Crossings Pilot Program. And there are a number of states now that are tapping into that money to help fund these wildlife crossing projects. So again, I found it heartening that actually congressional leadership had the foresight and the care to put that kind of money in for this purpose. And it's got, I mean, it's much more detailed than just the 350. It provides all this other stuff and kind of requirement, but it's really a rigorous program, and excited to see it happening. This is just another slide really showing the same thing. But 1 million wildlife vehicle collisions annually in the United States. $8 billion in costs to people, cars, medical costs. People, of course, do die when they hit mule deer and elk and moose, bear. And so there is, of course, a clear human dimension to this as well, to want to try to reduce it. But it also will certainly help wildlife. The last thing about this, there is legislation right now. I mentioned about the horseshoe grant legislation. There's actually legislation that's passed the Assembly and Senate that we think the governor is going to sign. I don't think there's any concern or opposition to it. That will kind of get New York folded into the game, beginning to I try to identify key places along New York State Thruway and other major roads that we could implement wildlife crossings, either on the overpasses, underpasses, that begin to try to reduce. Okay. Now we're going to turn our attention to the water, main focus of the law. I think find some little joke. So, as you may know or do know, since for 300 years, we have been very active in this country at damming up things. Small streams to big streams to small rivers to really big rivers. And anybody want to guess how many dams there are? You can't, because you already know. How many dams there are in the United States right now? About?
Million.
How many? I could.
A million.
Oh, okay, that's really. I thought the number I had was 90,000. 90,000 dams in a couple of centuries we've built. You got a good imagination.
It was a big.
Must be a good student.
Okay.
So anyway, 90,000 of dams and culverts have been installed, and so we need to really respond to this, and we have been able to respond. But first, just a little bit of focus on, as I like to say, on some biology. So what these dams and undersized culverts have really impacted are what we call diatomaceous fish. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but perhaps one of the two most well-known species of diatomaceous fish, and actually one that fits the category of called catadromous fish, which again I'll show you in just a second what that means, is of course the American eel. And remarkable species, its life history is amazing. There are some wonderful books. James Prosick has written a wonderful book on eels that I encourage you to take a look at if you're interested in it. But basically what you have is eels that go out to the Sargasso Sea. All the populations come out from North America, the adults that is, swim out to the Sargasso. The populations from Europe do the same. They mingle, they have this mass spawning activity that takes place in the Sargasso. And don't ask me I can't explain the details, but the young hatch out. At first, you can see you can see at the top the leptocephalus, tiny little transparent, almost like flukes or flatworms. But then they quickly become glass eels and into elvers. And you can see this experience on Long Island. And glass eels in some states are harvested, very, very, very lucrative for consumption, mostly in Asia, Japan and Asia. And so the American eel young will come into the freshwater system, move up, and it's there they will then develop. They will spend 10, 15, 20 years developing the fresh water and grow from being little, again, the glass eels, the elvers, to become, I just want to show you, there we go. I put this out, like, this is, sorry, it's jumping all around. One more time, okay, there we go. That's what they, of course, will develop in the freshwater systems, and you can see just how big American eel can be. I watched a, last fall, in Centerport, where there's that nesting bald eagle site, you know, I watched a bald eagle take a fairly large American eel, and that eagle struggled catching that eel and trying to get it. It did. It ultimately was able to become airborne and take off and bring it back to the nest. But they really get to be quite large, 4 or 5 feet in length. And important, again, food source. Historically, you know, colonially, a very important food source. Native Americans, a very important food source as well. So we just go back. So I actually put this slide out of order, I realized. Quick, so, and this is the only technical aspect of this presentation, just, so diagonous fish, American eel and the river herring I'm gonna show, and even to a lesser extent brook trout, are known as diagonous fish, and that basically is a fish that lives in 2 different worlds, 2 different environments during their life history, between freshwater and saltwater. So that's the kind of the catch-all definition. And then anadromous and catadromous are both subsumed underneath that. So anadromous are born in freshwater, but spend most of their adult lives in saltwater, and we'll get to that example of that in a second. But catadromous example, the best example by far, in fact the only one I can think of off the top of my head is with the American eel I talked about. So they're born in saltwater, sargasso sea, but they spend most of their adult lives in fresh water, returning to salt to spawn. So again, they'll come in the spring, they'll come up into the streams of Long Island. I don't know if anybody's seen this. This was a photo that I just took earlier in the spring at Grangeville Park in Riverhead, just south of the traffic circle on the Peconic River. And you can, it's a kind of not high quality, but a little bit soft, but you can see the glass eels that are quite adept at climbing a rock face, and they're trying to get up over that little wet wall to continue their journeys further upstream into the Peconic, where again they will spend many years developing, and then again moving out ultimately down the Peconic River, out of the Peconic Bay, and then out to the Atlantic, right here on Long Island. There's just a photo. You're gonna see interspersed sea tuck, who I work for, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about that in a bit, but we've been very active in anadromous fish conservation, that is the Sea Tuck Environmental Association. I work for them part-time, I get part-time for the town of Brookhaven with land acquisition, so that's just 2 different hats. But with Sea Tuck has been very active and a pioneer in trying to promote, again, migratory fish conservation on Long Island. So we put together this whole river revival project that I'll be referring to and referencing as we go along here. So that, and then the other diagonous fish that we have, this is the anadromous subcategory again, because it actually develops in saltwater, but it spawns in fresh, are the 2 river herrings. With also shad, also salmon, of course, and some other species, but on Long Island, shad are not found on Long Island stream, they were just too small. The shad really, Hudson River, Connecticut River, the bigger rivers you'll find shad in. So really, for all purposes, or intents and purposes, the 2 anadromous fish that we have are alewives and blueback herring. And again, their history you can kind of see in the lower right-hand corner. And I've got some photos of that, where in the spring, one of the great, tied to the natural world and a nature's year, love to go out in April, anywhere beginning mid-April into mid-May, go to any number of streams on Long Island, and you can see the alewife runs moving up the streams. Unfortunately, too many places though, they hit dams. And they can negotiate some of them because there's fish sliders, I'll be talking about that. But there's one place where they really do still do quite well because it's one of the few creeks on Long Island that is not dammed. I'm going to focus on that in just a little bit. So I do want to make reference to if you're interested, hopefully whetted your appetite about this topic, a wonderful book that you may want to take a look at. It's called Running Silver, written by John Waldman, Restoring Atlantic Rivers and Their Great Fish Migrations. And I passed it around, but I got a reference, I got to read something from it, so in a minute. But you can see, this gets to the point I wanted to make, that this is from a presentation, John, who's really one of the main drivers about migratory fish conservation, certainly on the East Coast. He's at CUNY, and he, in a presentation he gave, I actually just clipped this from this. Alewives, talking about the abundance of alewives at one time, came up to the fresh rivers to spawn in such multitudes, it's almost incredible, pressing up such shallow waters as will scarce permit them to swim. In April, there's a fish much like a herring that comes up into the small brooks to spawn, and when the water is not knee deep, they will press up through your hands, yea, thou, you beat at them with cudgels. What a mean, that's beat. And in such abundance. Anyway, the word is unbelievable and undescribable, incomprehensible. This reminds me a little bit about some of the descriptions you may have heard about with our passage revisions, and a lot of the wildlife that was here back in 1600, 1650, but just the largesse that we had, of just a wild wealth that we had at that time. And this brings me to talk quickly. You may have heard this concept in ecology about shifting baselines. When I see the alewives now and the eels, think, well, I get excited seeing a school of alewives out at Woodhull Dam, of maybe 150, 200 alewives swimming around. But that's normal to you and I, but that is, again, a tiny, pale comparison to what's had. And we fall victim sometimes when we think about this is the way it's always been. Well, it's not. Things were much, much richer at one time, giving us, we have hope and inspiration that we can actually take steps to restore things and not just accept those 150, 200 alewives swimming around in a pool, as exciting as that may be. And it is exciting to watch that. The last species I'll talk about is sea-run brook trout. That is a native trout that we have on Long Island, and they are not kind of classically diagenous, going great distances, but from what I understand, Doug can talk more about it than I could probably. There are sea-run brook trout will go between fresh water and out to the estuary to feed and back. And so if you don't have dams, you're allowing brook trout to really fulfill their life history in a way, like again with alewives and eels. But it's just a more localized kind of movement that they participate in. Okay, so the one place where you don't have any obstructions, and I would strongly encourage you, in fact, I'll make a commitment to you, working through Jeff perhaps, to next spring to lead a trip out to North Sea if you want to see the alewives as they're moving up Alewife Creek. So that is in the North Sea area, and here's North Sea Harbor. The creek comes here, down like that, cuts across. I tried to show it by the two fish here, and it goes underneath the road, and then into a big fresh pond. There are two culverts, one right at here and the other one right there. And they both have posed problems in the past, and the town of Southampton is moving to address that, which is great news. So this is the undersized culvert right at North Sea Harbor. That's brackish salt water there. And the problem is that during lower tide, fish can't move through the culvert and move their way inland to the big fresh pond. They have to wait for a high tide. Again, the good news is that the town of Southampton, using CPF money, has undertaken a construction project to re-engineer that culvert so that the fish can move pretty much all the time. That's a really crappy photo, but I just kind of like it anyway. That is 3 alewives that are moving left, heading up Alewife Creek. If you go to, if you don't want to go on a trip, but if you do want to go out on your own, Rose Ellison Park is a good place to park. Remember that? Ellison, Rose Ellison Park. You park there, there's nature trails, you walk down to the creek, there's a couple small bridges, you stand there and you can watch. If you hit it right, now of course, Mother Nature's not, as I always like to say, not a zoo, you don't know what, but if you go there enough times, you'll eventually hit it right, and you'll see the alewives moving up the stream. There's the big fresh pond that the alewives move up into to spawn, lay their eggs. The adults quickly move back out within a week, 2 weeks. The adults move back out. The eggs, of course, mature, and the young stay in that pond for several months to grow to the point where they could be an inch or two long. Here's again the creek from one of those little bridges. That's looking up. That's looking north towards North Sea Harbor. But that is a creek that was never dammed, and again has I think the only, or one of the very few unobstructed alewife runs on Long Island. It's really neat. Here's our River Revival Project. Again, I'm wearing my Seatuck Environmental Association hat. Seatuck, again, has been very active in trying to promote, as I mentioned, migratory fish conservation. And so we undertook an effort to try to identify all of the culverts and dams, working with experts in the Nature Conservancy. And you can see the green arrow, or the green stars, or yellow, I guess yellowish green. Anyway, the yellow stars are stream systems that have access, and the red ones are obstructions or blockages. And so you can see the work that we need to do to try to open up a lot more of these ponds and streams. You know, I just encourage you, if you go into our website, again, Seatuck Environmental Association, you can read in much more detail about this if you're so interested. So here's one of the major pinch points for alewives. This is on one of the 4 tributaries to the Peconic River. The Peconic River is the east-west flowing river that dumps into Peconic Bay. The Little River is one of the tribs. It drains out of Wildwood Lake, goes through Cranberry Bog County Nature Preserve, and then empties into the main channel of the Peconic, right by Grantsville Park, which I'm going to show you in a second. You can see that the culvert there, the dam, just make it really inaccessible for alewives. Alewives cannot leap. Salmon leap really wonderful. If salmon were here, that would not probably pose a problem, the movement upstream. But alewives are kind of wimpy that way. They can shoot, they're really fast swimmers, and they'll hit a fast flowing spot to try to go through and then get safe and then keep going up. But they just can't. There's no elevation to their swimming, so they can't really leap at all. So you see the problem there. So what do we do? So there's a brand new fish ladder that's situated. I just want to try to capture a little bit of both there, so you can see that's the metal frame for the spanking new fish ladder that's been installed to allow fish to gain access up into the Little River, and ultimately going to make their way up into Wildwood Lake. Here is just, I'm going to make a note, a culvert of the correct size and elevation. You see, again, that other culvert I showed you, you can see how, again, it could be a problem. A culvert of the right, it's got to be deep enough and wide enough to really kind of capture the whole stream bed. And if you do that, there's a good likelihood that you're going to be able to provide unimpeded access for species going up the stream. There's the, again, from the air, this is the same place. Again, I was standing right there. There's the spillway, there's the new fish ladder, and it's named in honor of Byron Young, who is a now retired New York State DEC fisheries biologist, was a biologist for many, many decades, and has an absolute love for alewives and knows a heck of a lot about the biology of the species. Very interesting fellow. Just a quick note, this is the Suffolk County Center in Riverhead. The legislature meets over here, and that's where we go to try to convince them to do good things environmentally. We go lobby. We're very active in, wear my Seatuck hat in a whole bunch of advocacy issues, and it was really neat. Last spring, spring of 2023, we actually had a field trip. We got out legislators, to walk across. They took a break in their deliberations, walked across and actually saw the migration. And it was wonderful for them to just see. If you can talk about it, you can maybe even show them pictures, but actually getting out there to see it in person is a different experience that really can allow people to connect. Again, there's the view of the Little River at the Woodhull Dam. Right to the right here is the culvert, and this way is the ladder. That is where the alewives really do pool. They want to come up and they want to go up the Little River. So you can see 150, 200 alewives easily pooling at the bottom of that. They are protected by law. They put up signs there. They want people fishing and catching alewives. Give state credit for putting them out. So river otters, which feed on eels and alewives, are regular roadkill victims as they circumvent dams. So I want to put this in for two reasons. One, to underscore, and I'm going to talk about in a second, how important alewives and eels are for a whole bunch of species that depend upon it. And why we have the loss of alewives means a diminishment in actual food for these wildlife species. But also to say, you may have heard about this, maybe Jeff, you could get Mike Bettini here at the Living World program. The river otters are beginning to really reestablish themselves on Long Island. And I know of at least 5 or 6 now, and it's actually more than that. Actually, found one, river otters that they're common roadkill. And the problem is, in some cases, the one I saw at Little Seatuck Creek is there's a dam. The otters can't get up over that dam. It's a 5-foot wall. So they go up on the bank and they cross over the road and then go back down and continue on. Well, this otter timing was terrible. And so they do get hit. And so one of the benefits of dealing with dams would benefit river otters.
There is Stony Brook over there as well.
Yes, yeah. So what else eats alewives? Again, there's 4 ospreys in view. That's again a crappy photo we took of the ospreys at the Woodhull site. There were 14 ospreys there. I've never seen so many ospreys concentrated in such a small area. And it's fascinating. I was thinking about that. One osprey had to. How did they get the word out? How did they know it? They discovered, the buffet is set. And when they were active, they weren't just sitting there looking at it. They were constantly, I can show you the photos of my phone, constantly diving successfully. I didn't see an osprey fail to make a catch every time. They're just, the fish are sitting ducks, it's just easy to catch. And the osprey know that, and they just gorged on it. It's really quite amazing. But what else eats alewives? Well, striped bass, tuna, bluefish, other marine fish, really very important. And there's been work that's clearly documented that. I just saw a photo actually of a tuna that had been caught and opened it up, and in its belly were some squid and some alewives. So, bald eagles, ospreys, herons, gulls, egrets, night herons, raccoons, fox, name a few. And again, if you go out to that Alewife Creek in Southampton, you will find carcasses all over of just the heads being eaten by raccoons or just parts of the body that they're a little bit wasteful. But anyway, they do take advantage of this seasonally abundant food source. And we did too at one time. There was rich in literature. Alewives are one of the most important species of fish to colonial America. Period. And it was one of the first fish species to actually have conservation laws passed back like 1642 to protect the alewife ones. It's a really fascinating species, which has been a long human-fish relationship and interaction. And it's just, again, the revival project. I went and pulled these off so we see the schools. Thousands of years late winter, seafaring fish called river herring migrated out of the ocean into Long Island's tributaries. And you can see, I just pulled this off again, the project is showing, you may not remember, not realize just how many streams and rivers we have on Long Island, being a kind of flat, outwashed plain, dissected by these very, very small. You can just see them all. This really shows quite quite well. And there's simply no reason why each of those, trips couldn't have a, alewife and eel run. They can't, because we've got 92 dams on Long Island that prevent that, but if that was dealt with, they would be able to, utilize. Here's just, again, a small, alewives. They're coming out after developing in a freshwater system, moving out, their way out. This is again at Woodall Dam. We catch them there in the pool. And just you can see again, an important part of this connection is migratory fish, river herring, American eel, and brook trout that move between fresh and salt water. I just want to belabor this point again to understand that these fish do live in two different worlds and depend upon the integrity and quality of both to survive. Here's just another hatch, young American eel in the glass eel stage. Okay, now we quickly talk about fish ladders. So what's been one of the solutions that has been developed to try to compensate for the construction of these obstacles, these dams? Again, I just pulled this off the internet. Now that's a fish ladder. Now what do you think of that one, huh? There's on the River Elbe in Germany, that had to have been many, many millions of dollars. But it has the basic characteristics of a fish ladder where the fish would come in here, work their way up a slope, getting protection, being able to rest behind these baffles, and ultimately working their way up and into the river system and continue moving upstream. Basic technology. This is the largest fish ladder I've ever seen, but that's the premise of the way it works. Here's a fish ladder that you can see. If you get off exit 71 of the expressway, don't make a right to head down Riverhead, make a left, and you're right where the Peconic River crosses over, you'll see that fish ladder that's there. It's called the Neo style fish ladder. Again, it's got baffles inside it. The hope is that the alewives, they sense the movement, move up in into the baffles, and work their way up into that first impounding. That, by the way, was one of the first granary bogs that ever existed on Long Island, the famous Brown's bog. That's a different story. And then to the left, you can't see it, is the eel. There's an eel passage that I didn't get the photo. I have it, but I forgot to put it in the photo here. So you see the scale difference of the fish ladders that are used. Here's another one. Look at this. I can't believe the engineer with that fish ladder. I have no idea if that's successful or not. But again, if you read John Walton, he talks about that, fish ladders really have not lived up to our expectation. That I've seen that some very, very low, just 1 to 2 to 5% of the fish will successfully navigate some fish ladders, to some that can be as high as 50 to 60%. So it really does depend on the technology, depends on the environmental setting there. And what Walden makes the point that the more successful fish ladders are ones that are more nature-like, that don't involve these metal boxes, but actually just take a kind of create a stream system that's gently sloping that enable the fish to be able to move more easily. And that best example I can give to you of that is at Grants Belt Park, the rock ramp at the Peconic River. That's looking east, and that fish come in towards you, coming this way, and coming in from the Peconic Bay, Flanders Bay, working their way up the Peconic River. And they do navigate that pretty successfully. It's one of the larger alewife runs that exist on the island. And in fact, just off view there's a neat metal sculpture of a bunch of alewives that some artists put in, kind of neat recognition of the alewife run that exists there. So you can see that. You can go and see that in the spring. There's the fish counter. One of the things we've done is actually, how do you know it's being successful? Is we actually exploit fish counters. Folks from Hofstra University has been helpful. Suffolk Community College professors have been helpful. They've been studying these runs and these species as well. And here's Grangeville Park. Again, you were looking that way. You were looking that way. And here's the rock ramp fish ladder. So this is slightly higher elevation, and so the fish come in from the bay like this, and then work their way this way. And then some go up down here to the Little River, and down over here is where the Woodhull Dam would be. Others would continue up the main stem of the Peconic. A little bit of geography sense. Okay, now I'm gonna focus on, that may be a photo that's familiar to you. That's the Stony Brook Mill Pond after the blowout. And there's been, of course, a lot of talk about what to do. A number of elected officials have been immediately declaring, say, both the dam that failed here as well as over at Blydenburg County Park and Hopog should be immediately repaired. I didn't put in it, but again, Enrico Nardone, the executive director of CTUC, and myself wrote an opinion piece in Newsday about a month and a half ago, said, let's not be so quick to do this. That indeed, in many cases, it would make sense to put the dam back, but let's be thoughtful about it. We would argue that in some cases, it doesn't make sense, that the benefits of having a free-flowing system outweigh putting the dam back. So there's, again, this Mill Pond, there's Blydenburg now. Living up to its name, that pond's called Stump Pond. It's true. You can see why. Doug and I were talking about that. I think those stumps are mostly Atlantic white cedar, which is a rare wetland tree. The best population I know of in western Suffolk County is in the southwest corner of Blydenburg County Park. I've actually done another monograph with Eric Lamont. We documented all the white cedar stands on Long Island. If you're interested in that, you go to the Botanical Society newsletters. You can read all about that fascinating tree. But one of the things that will happen if we do not put the dam back is you'll have a stream system feeding in from two locations. This is the stream coming down from the Hopog Springs area, bleeding literally out of the aquifer, the upper glacial aquifer here, and then this is the stream system that comes in from Miller's Pond, Village Branch, almost in the Town Line Road over by the town of Iceland. That's how that section of the stream comes in here. I have no doubt that if this is allowed to stay like this, I'll show you a slide why I say that in a second, but that Atlantic white cedar will begin to reestablish itself in that area. So here's the Stony Brook Mill Pond. Can you actually see here's where the dam was. There's again the blowout. Just a view of the pond. Of course, there was a lot of people were involved in trying to rescue the fish and the turtles that were found in the pond. I will note that by and large they were invasive, non-native species that people were so cared about. So from an ecological perspective, it's hard to be overly concerned. You understand from a human sympathy perspective, or people felt compelling to want to try to help these animals. But you can see already that let alone the Stony Brook Mill Pond will reestablish its stream channel, and eventually the plants will become growing on the sides and will become a full brook. As I like to say, put the brook back in Stony Brook. There's the southern end, there's the brook. Heads this way, it flows into the pond. This is a photo I just took 10 days ago. And you can see that, again, the clear, cold water that's flowing out of the aquifer system to the south. And lo and behold, fascinating, going out there, one person that was interested in trying to help the mute swans was walking along that stream section that I showed you, just up over to the left, and looked down on the gravel bed, saw what you thought was a rubber fishing lure. That rubber fishing lure became the ninth species of salamander ever found on Long Island. Did not know, I know my natural history pretty well from Long Island. I did not know we had northern dusky salamanders here. And there it is. We found, one person went out yesterday, I know, a very good naturalist, so we found 4 different individuals. I say that because they show a great deal of variation in terms of their color. So you can identify the 2 individuals. So northern dusky salamander is there, and And so that adds a whole new wrinkle. So what I'm kind of advocating for is if they are gonna move forward to put back the dam at Stony Brook Mill Pond, is to please incorporate two basic elements. To the extent engineering indicates you can, have a lower head dam and have again, a Grangeville Park fish ladder if that's possible, so that the mill pond can be accessible to the fish we've been talking about, the anadromous fish, again, alewives and eels. And not have a pond as big, therefore allowing a greater section for the stream, for the benefit of this really rare population of salamanders. This may be, I want to underline the word may 5 times. This may be something really genetically unique, and I wouldn't be surprised after having read about amphibian diversity and speciation that population would be a distinct species. In fact, the spokeswoman from the Smithsonian and American Museum of Natural History that want to do some tissue, they did get some DNA to take a look at it. Because that population's been reproductively isolated from many of the northern dusky salamanders for 15,000 years. That for salamanders, that's a very long period of time. So, kind of neat, right here in Stony Brook. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself, okay. So, the one example I want to show you, what could happen if we don't replace these dams? So, well, there's been 2 dam failures that happened before. The most recent 2 dam failures, again, the Mill Pond and at Weinberg. That was at Westbrook, down in Bayard Cutting Arboretum, and Sucking Meadow, the dam there, the extreme southern end feeding into this water, that failed with Superstorm Sandy. And so you can see here is, off the Suffolk County GIS, here's the pond that existed back in 2016. This is Sunrise Highway. This is Connecticut River State Park, you may be familiar with. Again, the Connecticut River flows like this. Look at it dry now. Just a stream coming down. This is the west branch of kind of Connecticut that comes down. And what will likely happen if you let it go? Well, there it is. You'll see. There you go. So this, you see the tree line? All this vegetation that's come in, enormous cattail, freshwater emergent marsh has been developed. And what's remarkable about it is that this seed bed, these seeds have been sitting there for more than a century, slightly more century, just biding their time. The conditions were right. And they germinated really quite quickly after. And so you can see that, again, of course, the main channel of the stream kind of meanders up towards the Sunrise is over here. And you can, again, just see willows coming in. You can just get a sense about the diversity, that's the floristic diversity that is happening. And there it is. So what we've done at CTOC, we actually hired the state botanist, Steve Young at the time before he retired, to come down and begin to document it. And it's irrefutable that if you're interested in plants and interested in flora, the number of species, the biodiversity that exists in these wet meadows along streams is 10-fold, 15-fold more than what you'll see in the ponds that will occur when you put the dam back and flood the impoundment. So from a biodiversity perspective, we make the case that a free-flowing conditions are better conditions. Here's the benefits that this again came from one of the papers we did about trying to justify. We had a little battle with Westbrook. This is within the state park. There were a whole constituency that were clamoring the state park commission to rebuild the dam immediately. We pushed back on that, and ultimately we have prevailed, and state park said they're not going to move forward. And literally every day that goes by, getting a little dramatic. Every month that goes by, you see the growth of the plants, and you see that the high quality natural conditions that are being set there. The more compelling the case is to not flood it, and they've agreed not to. You see there I am out with Eric Lamont, a very good botanist on Long Island, and there's Eric with the state botanist Steve Young on the right, inspecting some little creature there, plant on the right. So what are the benefits? Again, if you allow for it to be a natural state, a return of alewives, American eel. See, I even forgot to put harvest seals, of course, is another thing that eats, right? I should have put that in. habitat for sea run brook trout, conditions for river otters, resiliency for flooded sea level rise, dam repair savings, and I'll talk about that in a second, and then invasive species savings also. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So, one of the things I just pulled off the internet, again, with researching this presentation is the stress that climate change, and I would argue that that event that we had, the 11 inches, is something pretty freaky, you know, it's, I don't know what you want to say, once in 100 years, once in 500 years, but that, I remember talking, we just couldn't believe it, it's just not gonna stop raining, it was raining, and and you know, actually what unfortunately happened with the hurricane, and again, a hurricane fueled by climate change, holding that much more water. You probably learned this, it doesn't take much, like a degree or two more, that there's a formula for how much more water a hurricane will hold, and then that water gets dumped onto land masses, and of course, North Carolina paid the price for that, and a number of dams, a lot of dams failed. And so, another whole other thing, besides the benefits to having a free-flowing system for the fish, is for the biodiversity with the plants I've just shown. And if you're a fiscal conservative, I'd argue that you want to support a free-flowing condition, because it costs a lot to construct dams, maintain the dams, and to maintain the imbalance behind that. And here's the example that I'll give you. And where my town had, I was actually director of DEP, the environmental division for the town at the, when we were talking about needing to dredge the lower lake on the Carmens River. Well, actually, I retired from that position finally, but the idea wouldn't go away. And the town spent $4.2 million to dredge the impoundment, get rid of invasives in the lower lake. Those invasives would not be there if that dam wasn't there. It was a free-flowing situation. Well, guess what? Go out there, Doug goes out, go out there now, and the town threw its money away, $4.2 million, because the species to come back. You haven't changed the environmental conditions. You got a quiet, slow-moving impoundment that is great for these a number of aquatic invasives, like Abamba and others. So, being a fiscal conservative, you probably don't want to support the dams being put back. And then listen, from a public safety perspective, the Blydenburg Dam that blew out, I've been told, I don't know this for a fact, but that the houses downstream and the businesses were threatened. I heard that the water came up right up to Route 25. That's how much water came out of Blydenburg. And there's a few houses right there by the Phillips Mill Pond. There's another dam there that were affected. It's not unrealistic to think that those houses could have been washed away and people killed. You do know at Stony Brook, on that one house that was damaged, right, on the corner there, and under a slightly different scenario, you could easily imagine how the poor people living in that house could have been killed. The whole wing of the house was taken away, right? So if we're going to have these dams, it clearly comes at a significant price. And so what we did back in 2018 at CTOC, we actually hired a economics student, and she just, it's a much longer paper, I'm just to highlight two things. According to DC, Long Island boasts 98 dams. Okay? Not only are the waters behind the dams prevented from reaching the coast, but a natural species of migratory fish whose historic spawning grounds lie in the headwaters, prevented from traveling upstream. Many dams were originally utilized in the creation of hydropower and built alongside mills to power colonial and post-revolutionary industry on Long Island. The point I want to make there is that almost all these dams are really, the uses for why they were created are obsolete. It's different throughout New England and other places where a lot of these dams still function to generate electricity, right? Hydroelectric dams. You say that particular purpose outweighs removal of dam and the benefits of that, because you need to generate power for human use and for industry. But I can't think of a single dam that exists on Long Island that really has any relevance anymore, fulfilling the purpose for which it was originally constructed. So that you get 70 is used for recreation, which is to people want to have a view of ponds. Okay, and then she concludes almost all the 98 dams no longer serve their original purpose. 70 of them listed by DC as being used for recreation, and percent dams below ground are largely obsolete. They've become, over the past decades, centuries, an aspect of the landscape that's viewed as natural, when in reality, they are anything but. Dams significantly alter the natural movement of rivers and streams along it. I even talked about sediment, loading, and energy movement. That's a whole other thing we talk about. The benefit, again, having free-flowing systems is the movement of energy and sediments to the coastal area and the benefits that creates. So, lastly, get to the friend. Thank you for your patience. So, if you're interested about this, if you go online, we actually worked. One of the first things I did when I came to CTUX, I worked on helping to write this document with Enrico and others, Long Island Diagonous Fish Restoration Strategy. It's really good reading, so get your cup of tea tonight, put on a computer, and if you have an interest in fish, and this issue, you'll get a kick out of it, right? Enjoy this document. And this has really been what we like to do at CTUX is we like to kind of prepare these blueprints for Long Island. I just recently did with water reuse, a whole other topic, to try to provide a kind of a blueprint or a roadmap for Long Island. We try to promote water reuse, which we need to do. We've done it here for with regard to the fish. And again, that river revival component was a key component of CTUC's work in that regard. If you want to volunteer, again, ready your appetite, you want to go out and see alewives live, and you want to see if you can find some runs. People have been doing this, and they're still discovering some new runs, I think, over the past couple of years. You can do that. You should reach out to Enrico and reach out to the CTUX staff. You can pick a stream section and check it out in the spring and see if you can document the presence of alewives and then a little bit later blueback herring coming through. And so we will conclude. From 1912, over a century, here's the good news. 2,000, basically 120 dams have been not taken down. Now, again, it's 90,000, so in that respect, it doesn't seem like a lot, but I'm just gonna take the total. That's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. A lot of people that care about this have been involved in this effort of removing dams. So here's my point. And I'll conclude by just making mention of this book again. It is just a wonderful book. He's a really wonderful writer. Really waxes poetic at places in the book about trying to restore a number of these fish runs, and optimistic about the future that we could have these fish runs reestablished. So that's it.
You can read that book, half of it for free online.
There you go. Okay.
And then you'll see the review.
So that's it. Thank you. And questions, comments,
Just raise your hand if you have a question.
Yeah, so it's a great talk, thank you. One comment I have is, one of the criticisms we often hear about dam removal is we don't need to do it because we've installed fish passage.
Right.
Even if the fish passage is effective, the dam changes the character of the ecosystem. In many cases, these impoundments or giant solar collectors, it changes the stream system from being a whole water ecosystem, which it would naturally be here on Long Island, because it would be groundwater fed, to a warm water ecosystem, which also promotes invasive species. And I think it's important to remind people that, because it's not just a physical barrier that is the issue here, it's a thermal barrier that's also.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Did everybody hear Doug what he was saying? Yeah. Thank you. I didn't focus on that. I mentioned that. And that's the thermal impacts, right? Yeah.
Could you say just a little bit more about, you suggested at the Stony Brook Mill Pond that a smaller dam was possible. What would be the benefits and what would be the outcome of that?
The benefits of a lower dam, again, this is hypothetical, so you have to do detailed engineering there, would be easier to be able to install a fish ladder there, because anything you do to reduce the elevational change is a good thing. And if the dam's lower, it means that the overall pond would be smaller. and that means more streams for the northern dusky salamander.
A couple of things I didn't quite understand. One is,
I'm sorry.
you said that alewives don't jump,
Right.
but to go up a fish ladder, they do have to at some level, don't they?
They're wimpy. They really don't. Oh,
But
they can move, they're going with an elevation, they're going up a ramp.
Yeah.
And they can really swim against fairly strong currents. They can do these bursts that are quite remarkable for short periods of time. So
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
I don't understand
Yeah.
the concept. The
Yeah.
water is running down the,
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, let's show you the inside of the fish ladder. It's basically a chamber, rectangular chamber, it's got these baffles.
Yeah.
The middle of it's clear, baffles that come out from the sides that provide the fish an opportunity to move up and then hide and
Okay.
rest, and then go out and continue, yeah.
The other question was, you explained how you can sort of channel the turtles and the salamanders into the crossings.
Yeah.
How do you do that in Banff National Park with bears and with mountain lions in California?
They do, yeah.
You know, you've got, your
Fencing.
if you're
Miles and
yards
miles
wide,
of fencing.
but it's miles between them, right?
Florida, the best, when I first started hearing about this many, many decades ago, the species that I heard of it was Florida panthers getting hit on Alligator Alley. And that, Florida panthers, the population is just not particularly robust, and real fear at just roadkill events could send the species to extinction. And so they put in a number of, I'm pretty sure they're all underpasses there. But they've got dozens of miles of fencing. that
Okay, so
require
you fence the
animal-
whole road, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let me just start, okay, go ahead, Josh.
I'm just wondering, specifically about Stony Brook Pond.
Yes,
I mean, you make a very nice scenario that Stony Brook Pond could develop into something lovely. For example, a cattail marsh. So is CTUC or any other organization thinking about surveying the sediment there to look for seedlings to see if there is a restored possibility of things just springing back to life and?
we haven't done it, we could do there, what we did at Westbrook, but I guarantee you the seed bank is there. And I've already seen,
Yes.
have you seen, I've already been, I walked that, I've already seen plants that are starting to come up. I don't know what species they are.
Right, that's the
Like,
question of maybe what might be invasives.
Maybe,
But they might, if it'd be wonderful if they're.
the one invasive I'm most concerned about there would be, and we've had to deal with this at Westbrook to some extent, we've had actually volunteers, is Phragmites coming in and pulling the Phragmites. That's the primary, I think the only invasive of concern that we've been having to do. Before you go, I just want to remind again, please, if you did take the horseshoe crab postcard, put the stamp on it and send it off to the
Where
government.
should we mail those?
Huh?
Where do we mail them?
You'll see it, it's on the address on it, yeah. You're sending it to the Governor Kathy Holt, Governor Kathy Holt.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
You can also do it online.
Yeah, online, you can call, all the above. We need the public support for her to convince her to sign the bill. Yeah,
Quick question, there's been an issue, for example, in Secaucus Pond where the water quality is poor and most of the year, I guess. That's obviously down as well. Is there any way of improving the water flow through the Secaucus Pond to maybe improve the quality of the water there, allowing more water to be released or?
the best way to do is by, I hate to be a broken record, is removing the obstacle.
I don't
Because the water's it's backed up, you
The will's not
know?
there though.
What's that?
I don't think the will in the community is there.
Yeah,
to
right, I
remove
understand,
it.
yeah. Well, again, and I don't want to be dogmatic and say that, in all cases, wherever there's a dam on Long Island, it should be removed or not replaced if it is blown out. What we're saying is that there are clear benefits, though, for having free-flowing systems. Those benefits, I would argue, in almost all cases outweigh restoring the dam. But there are times when you may want to restore the dam. Again, it's Stony Brook Mill Pond for the historic value of the mill. And what the community knows there, as in the town where you go feed the ducks and fish and just walk around, that's really important to the community. That is what determines maybe the outcome. we're saying that please let kind of the natural perspective or biodiversity and the benefits of wildlife. I mean, I haven't gone into detail about this, but I mean, alewives have declined, that I talked about the shifting baselines. I mean, alewives have declined precipitously. And one of the causes is dams. The poor fish can't get to where they once were able to get, hundreds of years ago. And you see this, you see them swim up, even these kind of, I don't quite know what if it's ancestral or they're just scouting, because alewives will do this, when I understand. They'll move to other stream sections and come up and instantly hit it down, but it would really be wonderful if we could systematically and thoughtfully remove some of the dams. And one last thing I'll say is that one of the pushbacks is that, well, I live next to that impoundment, that lake, and I got that beautiful view, and you can affect my property values. That person that we hired, she conducted a nationwide literature review and found a number of studies. All of those studies, the most two recent ones, one was in Wisconsin, the other was in Maine, that documented property values went up when the dam was removed. People had a free-flowing stream alongside the yard instead of this sterile, wet, soggy, warm habitat. So anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, could you talk to where the engineer is, what approach the engineers take at this point with Stony Brook? Are they going Route A or Route B? And
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I know that from what I've been gathered, talking with people, key decision makers as well as in the papers, that there's strong interest in replacing that dam. I don't know where things stand. Obviously, you have to factor in, rebuilding the road, and if we are able to get a dam below that, then it's not going to be a bridge then. You're not going to see the dam itself as it serves infrastructure upon which the road would be laid on. So we're still just trying to again raise the issue about it.
so is it going to go through public comment? And I don't know what happens.
Yes, there is I'm curious to know how both the replacements, if they do move forward, and Doug and I were talking about that, you got what they call a State Environmental Quality Review Act. To what extent secret will be triggered. It might be more triggered for Lineberg because it's a bigger system than for the mill pond. But I think we would argue, file a number of lawsuits saying secret has not been followed. We could argue that secret requires a really detailed environmental analysis. And because secret is a wonderful framework for assessing the environmental impacts of a project and discussing ways to mitigate it and discuss ways to try to maybe not move forward with it. That happened a few times when I was director of DEP. Secret will come into play at some point. The other thing I heard through the grapevine, I don't know this definitively, but I've heard that state DEC, the fisheries people, are moving towards a kind of requirement that any new dams that are put back do have to have a fish ladder with them now. So again, I wouldn't hold that to be absolutely the case, but that's what I've heard through the grapevine.